There we go. So I'm actually wearing two hats today. One is as a board member of the Open Charge Alliance. Open Charge Alliance is the, it's OCPP Forum.2. So everyone here, a show of hands, who is familiar with the Open Charge Point Protocol, OCPP? Okay, great. It has now been moved into the Open Charge Alliance. We've done that for a number of reasons. One is to take on a more global international approach as we go from version 1.5 to 2.0, and also as we want to put in some standards and compliance testing, certification testing, as governments in the United States, in local state agencies, actually start to mandate that OCPP be used for any public funds that are being put forth towards EV infrastructure. They want to know that when something gets put in, it truly will be plug and play. So that's the genesis of the OCA, and I'll talk a little bit about it as I go on. And then my company, Greenlots. Greenlots is a technology company that provides network management solutions for EV infrastructure, taking things all the way from the charge point to the utility back office, using nothing but open standards. So it's OCPP between the charge station and the back-end network, and things like OpenADR, SCP 2.0 to talk, for dynamic pricing, smart charging to the utility back office. One of the first things that I do whenever I'm talking about this is I try to give a definition of interoperability, because the word is used quite loosely in our industry, and it starts to get the conversation, it starts to get confusing and complex very quickly. So it's really the three-legged stool. Interoperability as it relates to the EV and the EVSE. It's talking about CHAdeMO, J1772, SAE combo. That's something I'm not going to touch on today as much as I will about the other forms of interoperability, which is the communication between the network management system and the charge station, where we're supporting OCPP as opposed to proprietary protocols. And then last but not least, which is very important, and it's been mentioned a few times today, is driver roaming, and the ability for a driver to have a subscription to one particular group and then be able to take that card and use it at multiple charge stations, irregardless of other affiliation. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Just to give you some perspective on California towards the rest of the United States, we've got a lot going on in terms of EVs. I think Paul attested to it earlier. 40% of all the vehicles sold are in the state, and we have 20% of the infrastructure that has currently been deployed so far in the United States. In addition to having the infrastructure, we have a government that is very sustainability oriented. Governor Brown has his zero emission vehicle plan, ZEV guidebook, that expects to have 20 million vehicles on the road by the year 2025. So it's a very ambitious plan, but one that he is also backing up with the significant measures. One was a recent passing of AB 8, which allows for the rebates and incentives for consumer as well as fleet vehicles, up to the tune of $2 billion in funding. And then additional clean vehicle and it also, extends the program all the way through 2023. The other thing that's actually unique to California, and I think will probably take hold throughout the rest of the United States, is SB 454, which is the Open Charge, Open Charging Act. And really what it is doing, in the United States, there's been a lot of proprietary networks that have come up, and if you don't have a subscription to these particular models, then you haven't been able to use charge stations. And so what that has done is deterred people from actually being able to buy vehicles and use the infrastructure as they see fit. So SB 454 actually requires that anyone that has a charge station in the ground and it's available for public consumption, so if you have one for workplace and it's behind on your campus, that doesn't qualify, but if it's out in the public in any way, shape, or form, you have to allow someone to use it that might not have a subscription. And that kind of dovetails into the various types of payments that we use in the United States to actually make payments for the electric vehicles. We're a little far behind Europe in terms of how we use our credit cards, if at all. We still have to actually do the physical swipe, which I think, when I come here and try to use my card, people look at me cross-eyed. But that's the way we still do it over in the United States. But the point is, we have multiple ways we can pay for things. You can use the RFID card, which most membership subscription companies usually start off with. You can use an RFID card. I know with Greenlight's application, we have a QR code on the front of every one of our charge stations, and all you have to do is scan it. It will authenticate you, and you can start. But then there's consumers that want to use a credit card, right? Because that's what they know, and that's what they're used to. And we are asking consumers to change so much in the way that they actually think about going about fueling their vehicle that we don't also need to put on top of them the mandate that they change the way they pay for things. You can use your credit card to buy everything from, you can pay for your parking spot, you can buy a can of Coke or a bag of chips, and I don't know the last time I had to sign up for a subscription to use my credit card to buy Coca-Cola, right? So the SB 454 goes a long way to allow these multimodal payment options out into the market. We have to be concerned that it's not going to increase the overall cost of installing the charge stations themselves, but I think we'll be able to get through that. So some characteristics of the deployment that's happened in the United States. The first round of EV infrastructure that was put out was subsidized by the government. The Department of Energy put approximately $300 million towards rolling out of infrastructure. And they did that with primarily what we call level 2, 240-volt charge stations. And they were put in various parts of the countries where they thought EV adoption was going to be strong. But they did these with proprietary networks. There were two companies, ChargePoint and Equality, both got these grants. And as we saw the heat maps in terms of proper siting and the placement of charge stations, there was not necessarily a lot of foresight that went into this. If people qualified for a charge station, they were vetted, the charge station went in, and there was really no thought about the usage and how they would be utilized. The last statistics that came out of Equality's analysis showed that of all the charge stations they deployed, and they've got about 12,000 in the ground. Of those 12,000, I would say about 3,300 are public. The rest are residential, but they've got a less than 4% utilization rate. So that's not good, right? And that's not going to be good for anyone looking to make a case for trying to put more charge stations in so that we put them in the right place. And there's an argument that says, well, level 2 might not be the appropriate type of charge station for the public. We see a lot of use cases for business, for workplace charging, for level 2 and level 1. But when we're talking about public infrastructure, I think what serves it best is the DC fast charge, because it's for the US, it's more of an opportunity charge. There are pockets, California actually happens to be one, where there are a lot of people that live in multifamily housing, but generally, the United States, people have a private parking garage and dwell, and so the public charging is going to be that of opportunistic. The one other issue that we've had, and I've heard this mentioned earlier as well, is that people were sold on the dream, right? If you put in a charge station, people will start coming to your place. You can charge them so much money to charge their vehicle that it's going to drop right to your bottom line. Your net OI is going to go through the roof. So let's put these charge stations in, and you can be one of the first to experience the new wave of entrepreneurship in the US with charge stations. And as we all know, has anyone found a case so far that works for a positive ROI? It doesn't exist. Maybe it will one day, but consumers are very price sensitive to what they're paying for electricity. In the United States, in California, the average someone pays is 11 cents per kilowatt hour at home. The most they're willing to pay outside of the house is 17 to 18%, or 18 cents. So there's just no money to be made. And the quicker we re-educate people on what the opportunities are for charging and how we should be putting it in, I think the better off we'll all be. Subsequent to this, we've had some missteps. As I mentioned, the networks that went out were proprietary in nature. At first it was Better Place, and I know there's actually a few of us here that can all commiserate about what's happened with Better Place, but in particular, in the city on the island of Maui in Hawaii, they had about 90 charge stations that just went offline. And someone actually picked up the assets and was trying to run them. But not only was their back-end communication proprietary, the RFID cards were proprietary too. So there's like an Easter egg hunt trying to scramble around and see if we can get RFID cards and ship them to people so that they can actually continue to use those charge stations out in Maui. And the result of that is that new money is going to go to replace old infrastructure. Right? And that's just a disaster for any nascent industry that's going in. Ecotality, as we're speaking, there might be an announcement, but it was put into declared bankruptcy. It was put into Chapter 11 only so that it could, and Nissan, and Paul, I think you wrote the personal check, right? $1.5 million. Paul wrote a check for $1.5 million on behalf of Nissan, who actually kept the company afloat until they could find a proper buyer for it. So any time now, whether today or tomorrow, the final winner should be announced. I can tell you that. So if the government put $200 million into this program so they could build this out from the ground up, the stalking horse bid, which was the initial bid for all the assets that are left, was $3 million. So that's not a good thing. Whether it's and the reality is, the bright side is, the electric vehicle industry is really healthy in the United States. I mean, our compounded average growth rate is 3 times what it was for the regular hybrids when they first adopted. People are getting involved. People are buying these vehicles, and it's all working. But we have black eyes like this that really negatively impact people's perception and ultimately maybe their purchase decision. And then it becomes a political issue, and no one ever wins when that happens. So, how do we get away from that? Well, as Peter so eloquently alluded to, one of the things that we did, we started off, partially self-serving as a competitive advantage to everything else that was going on in the marketplace. But also, I mean, we want to be part of this industry. And the last time I checked, 85% of zero was still zero. So if we didn't have a market to try to have market share on, there was no point in continuing. And the only way to do that was to give power back to these site hosts and the operators and the owners of these charge stations. Everyone who's getting into this, and I say getting into this, I mean actually trying to operate a charge station, is doing it for the first time. They can do as much study and analysis about what they think their use cases are going to be ahead of time, but you really don't know how consumers are going to react and what your needs are going to be until you've put that first charge station in. And as a result of that, you need to have the flexibility to change, whether it be the hardware that doesn't meet your needs or the software backend that meets your needs. And with these proprietary systems, everyone was stuck. And they've been stuck. So they might have gotten a free charge station and a free year of network management service for a year. That grant ended, and then all of a sudden they get a bill for $40 a month. They're like, what the hell is this for? Like, well, you're off the grant, and now you need to pay. I'm like, well, but it barely gets used. It barely gets used. I can't use it the way I want to. Can we work out something? And the answer has been, you have 2 choices. You can either pay us to use it, or shut it down. The charge station will still work, but you have no access control, authentication, billing, or anything like that. It's just a dumb charge station. And so that's not good. And there's been a lot of pushback on that because these charge stations aren't meeting folks' needs. And sometimes the worst thing that can happen is people throw up their hands and say, forget it, I just don't want to bother with this. We have other things that we need to deal with. And we've seen that happen not to a large extent, but it's starting to happen. But the good news is the great work that has been done here with ELAD and OCPP, which we had found out about, and that is basically OCPP stands for Open Charge Point Protocol. No relation to the company ChargePoint. But it's a very simple concept. It just allows you to have information go from the charge station to the network back office for free. There's nothing proprietary about that standard. It's open to anyone that wants to use it. Becoming a member of the Open Charge Alliance, which I will strongly encourage everyone to do. But all that gets you is the ability to get involved in the development of the standard if you have particular things you want to see in the spec, or you want to be able to get first mover advantage and look at it and see what it requires to implement. You get the spec sooner. But once it's published, it's out there, it's open, and it's for free. Everyone can use it. And the rationale behind it is simple. Again, I make a network management solution. I think it's a great product, but should have to compete on feature, function, and price. And once I've got that customer, I have to continue to earn that customer's business. And if they don't like me, they should have every right to kick me out. Hopefully they'll be nice when they do it, but they should have the rights to find someone else, and it should be a seamless transition. And so using this open standard really gives the power back to the site hosts and people that are making the decisions of whether or not to put the infrastructure in place. No doubt that the drivers and their pain points with interoperability are extremely important, and I get that. But before we even get to that, we have to worry about the people that are actually going to be committing to putting the infrastructure in the first place. And using an open protocol like OCPP gives them that ability to mix and match different pieces of hardware with different software backends. And for those of you that aren't familiar with OCPP, it's actually active in over 50 countries now, that says 10,000, but about 12,000 installations that we know of to date. And as we move to the new, from OCPP 1.5 to 2.0, there's some members that have 7,000 units waiting on the sideline that they're going to be putting back onto that. So in probably 6 months, there will not be any other, this will be the protocol that more charge stations are running on than any other in the world. So again, just a little bit more about the Open Charge Alliance. We actually just made this announcement last week at the Plug It conference in San Diego. The purpose for doing this was, again, to try to create a broader appeal. It started off as an ELAD Netherlands initiative. It caught fire throughout Europe and has become the de facto standard. And then now we've been doing our part to try to create awareness in the United States, particularly California, New York. The California Energy Commission, which is the group that provides funding for infrastructure projects, is going to release their proposals within the next 2 weeks. And I have a high degree of confidence that they are actually going to mandate that any dollars that they put forth to infrastructure, and if it has communications, is going to mandate that the Open Charge Point Protocol is used. And that's huge. That's extremely huge, because again, now everything that we put in, whatever you put in today, is going to be good tomorrow. It's all going to be scalable and future-proof. And to do that, the organization has to make sure they have the proper tools to do certification and conformance testing. Here's just a quick slide on just some of the members that have already joined. If anyone has any interest in finding out more, I would strongly encourage you to go to openchargealliance.org and request some information. Would love to have you as a part of that. And other than that, let's drink.